always said, no deal is better than a bad deal.
Becomes day after day more likely.
Well, a hard Brexit, a no-deal Brexit for the security community, certainly for policing, would be very bad for the security of this country and very bad for Europe as well. What it means is a loss of access to some significant data sets from significant ways of working in terms of sharing information across the border, sharing biometrics, fingerprints and DNA across the border, and also for things like the European arrest warrant, which allow us to arrest and extradite people or to get people back who we want to prosecute in this country from Europe. All of those things will revert back to old-fashioned techniques, which will be very clumsy, very clunky, very cumbersome. And the longer it takes to process intelligence, the more risk you sit on. So for core policing, that's very bad.
It would be a disaster for British business if we were to leave in that way. So we do need some kind of arrangement, and I guess the arrangements that Mrs May has tried to put in place are about as good as we can hope to get. So, I hope Parliament bears that in mind over the next few weeks.
So instantaneously, this whole WTO rules, we'd have to apply tariffs. Now, these tariffs are extraordinary at times. So I currently buy all salads. Our salad import tariffs are 10 to 14%.
Yes.
Now, we reckon, and we're only 5% of the market, every percent of trade tariff will cost us about 10 to 15 million pounds. You times that by 20, you're looking at 200 to 300 million pounds, and that's just the tariffs. Now, you then got the impact of weakening forex. Everything that comes through Dover is going to be impacted. It's not just 25% of the EU, everything is impacted.
It makes a great newspaper headline, Mr. Thomas. Stockpiles of medicines, and my listeners get this idea of warehouses where there's piles and piles of drugs and God knows what. Is that the reality?
Yes, it is, yeah.
And how many of your members are doing that?
Every member is doing that. And I think that's why patients can be reassured that we are doing everything in our power to make sure that we can get our medicines to them, even though this is the biggest logistical challenge that we are facing. And our message is, when parliamentarians come to think about the options ahead of them, no deal is something which they should avoid at all costs. There are over 12,000 medicines which are licensed to be used in the UK. That's a massive challenge for us. On average, there's normally about 50 medicines which have some shortage problem, so we're used to managing shortages. But clearly, when we're talking about the challenge that we're facing here, there will be unexpected issues we have to deal with.
Mr. Hardy is a former director of P&O Ferries, also ran the largest 24-hour customs freight terminal in the UK at the Port of Dover. Is now with Oakland Invicta, a Brexit planning agency. Give us your prediction then, if you would.
That imports would be okay. We could do with a bit. I've been planning for no deal since Article 50 day. On imports, fine. I'd like a 3-month extension till July, please. Exports, I'd like the government to suggest a scheme where they would fund the transit guarantee to make life a little bit easier, and to also have inland authentication points, in which case I can relax, apart from food, which requires which all food would be required to go to a border inspection point in Calais, which hasn't yet been built. So I'm a bit worried about that one.